Hey guys, so this is kind of a weird off-the-cuff video. This is something I haven't done before. I know I just said that in my last channel update, I just said I wasn't going to be showing my face as much, but given that this video is going to be responding to another content creator, I decided it was probably a good idea not to just have their entire video, taking up because that's that's a little disgusting, to just straight up reappropriate the content in that manner. So yeah, I figured we need to have something else going on the screen. Might as well be my face. So what I'm doing today is I'm actually responding to a content creator who I have followed for years. I really like this content creator. Their name is Council of Geeks. That's the channel name they go by. They're also known as Vera Wild Online. And she is someone who I have respect for, especially within the Whovian community, which Whovian is like because even though I'm a fan of Doctor Who, it's kind of like in the same vein of like how I feel about Trekkie. Even though I'm a fan of Star Trek, I think that word is fucking stupid. But what can you do about it? It's just a bit of fun. It's just a moniker. It's not that deep. So, but yeah, there's someone that I respect in this community, and they're not someone who I've always agreed with. I've certainly had disagreements with them before, which I think is healthy. You shouldn't 100% agree with everything that somebody else says. You should. There are always going to be some differences, But I saw this video in my recommended a few weeks ago, and it's just I haven't seen it yet. I've watched about a minute of it, but it kind of just I don't know, it just kind of stuck with me, and throughout the entire week I was kind of building up this idea of like, I don't know, maybe there's something in here that I want to respond to. Like I just want to see what the argument is, because I don't agree with the basic premise that is sort of given to you in the title and the thumbnail of the video. So I kind of wanted to see what it was all about. And like I said in my channel update, I want to move my channel sort of further away from just gaming content. And I also want to have stuff like media criticism and analysis, because that's really where my heart is. I think I've said before that I aspire to be a writer. I'm currently working on a manuscript. So that's sort of where my passion lies when it comes to content creation. And a majority of the people who I watch on YouTube are, they talk about media and writing and what have you. So Doctor Who is a franchise, I guess, that's pretty close to my heart. I've seen all of the classic era. I've seen most of New Who. The only stuff I haven't seen are the recent Jodie Whittaker's specials, like the 3 that they released last year. And I don't think I'm going to come back anytime soon. I wasn't a big fan of Russell T Davies and the 10th Doctor the first time around, which you guys would know if you've seen my ranking every Doctor Who video, ranking every Doctor Who televised story video. So I think I'm going to sit out on Doctor Who until Shudigatwa fully takes over as the 14th Doctor, or the 15th, because I believe they're calling Tin 2 the 14th Doctor, but I don't know, that doesn't sit right with me. So anyway, yeah, I think that Vera is someone who has a very similar experience when it comes to Doctor Who to me. I believe she said that she started with New Who, as most people have, as I have, then branched out into the classics, eventually branched out into Big Finish, which is, I've always personally considered Big Finish to be where Doctor Who is at its best. Big Finish is the most consistently good Doctor Who that you will find. That has always been my take on the matter. And I've kind of, in response to the degrading quality of the show and the writing on the show, I've sort of stepped more away from it and more into Big Finish as my primary Doctor Who intake, you could say. So anyway, what interested me so much about this video was, as I said, like the title and the thumbnail, and as someone who's aspiring to be a writer, to get published, I think that having a plot that makes sense something that, not necessarily airtight, but you should try as hard as you can. Sort of as the writer, I believe that it is your duty to try as hard as you can to make sure your plot is as airtight as you can make it. It's not going to be, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't try to make it as good as you possibly can. Because even the tiniest plot hole or contrivance, I believe any sort of level of that kind of stuff is a detriment to the overall quality of a piece of art, and therefore they vary in degrees, but they're flaws regardless. Like the time travel bullshit in Endgame is not quite that is much worse than an SUV showing up in the background of Fellowship of the Rings. Those two are different planes of existence. The SUV it changes nothing, essentially. You don't even need to really consider it. Meanwhile, with the time travel in Endgame, that is what you're forced to deal with for the majority of that movie, is how that works and the ramifications of it. So I think that really bad plots, really poorly conceived plans, especially from the antagonist, who is supposed to be threatening, can lead to the detriment of the overall quality of a piece of art. And I'm willing to see sort of what the counter argument is, and see why, as Vera puts it, villain plans don't have to work. I'm very excited to get into this. So we're just gonna start her up here. So.
Hey folks, let's talk about villains, or more specifically, let's talk about villains' plans, or more specifically than that, let's talk about why it doesn't matter if they would work or not. I'll get more specific as we go, but I suppose I'll start with, what am I even talking about? Well, I have my general issues with the sort of plot hole, this isn't real, that wouldn't go that way style of criticism. I don't mind it when people enjoy it as an exercise, or some things are so broken in terms of plot that it does take you out of a movie. That's a legit complaint, but anytime it's masquerading as criticism, the movie's bad because this thing is a plot hole. I'm like, oh, crying out loud. Look, a plot hole can make a bad movie worse. A plot hole does not suddenly make a good movie bad.
Okay, it appears that we have a complete thought there, so I want to pause there and sort of dissect what we've got so far. So, right now, the main argument seems to be, or I feel like the main argument of the video hasn't been presented, so I'll just focus on, what has been given to us so far. So from this argument, they appear to be saying that, I guess minor plot holes and contrivances don't matter too much when it comes to the execution of a story, if you will. So I have a few thoughts on this. Like I said, I think that everything it certainly has degrees, but it's different if you're she says here she doesn't like it when it's masquerading as criticism, and the example that I jump to in my head is that terrific video that Patrick Williams made years ago about why plot holes don't matter. In which he claimed that the alien's blood melting through the starship but not going all the way through the whole of the ship in Alien, he claimed that was a plot hole, and he claimed that it didn't matter. So first of all, that's not a plot hole. It is explained in the movie why that doesn't happen, and even if it wasn't explained in the movie why that doesn't happen, acid doesn't work that way. Even if they didn't explain how acid works in the movie, that doesn't change how acid works. They have that explanation there for the audience's convenience, because not everybody is a chemistry major in the audience, right? So that I would consider as plot hole breaks the movie masquerading as criticism, and Patrick Williams kind of used that to strawman his position, or strawman his opposition, and claim that plot holes don't matter. and that video is a whole other can of worms that has been dissected by people far better than me. Most notably Mahler and JXC have had a field day with that video in the past. They both have wonderful breakdowns of it. I definitely recommend checking out JXC's video because it's nice. It's very nice. It's recently released, I believe, within the year. It's got good editing as one can expect from Jay. Yeah, definitely recommend checking that out. As for the overall point, they say here that a plot hole makes a bad movie worse, but it can't make a good movie bad. So I'm kind of confused on where exactly the degree of when something becomes bad is. They said
it already needed a bunch of other stuff going on with it, but
yeah, I thought so. Okay, so yeah, she says in order for a plot hole to make a good movie bad, that movie already has to have a lot of other stuff going for it. Whether that be other plot holes, I imagine, like, you know, the more you get, the more convoluted, the more nonsensical your plot becomes. That is something I certainly agree with. Like, that is on my sort of philosophy that you get bad or you get worse the more nonsensical your plot becomes. You know, it's not just one nonsensical thing makes the movie bad suddenly, but I do think that having one nonsensical element of your plot in an otherwise airtight plot, I do think that's still a flaw. Take one of my favorite movies of all time, Pulp Fiction. We'll just say if somebody brought Pulp Fiction to me and brought attention to a plot hole and was like, hey, here's all the reasons why that doesn't make sense. Here's my sources. Here's these references. You know, and it was just like solid. Yeah, this element of the movie does not make sense in any conceivable way, in any reasonable way that the audience could reason with it. In that case, I would still concede, like, yeah, okay, so that's a flaw with Pulp Fiction. It doesn't change the fact that, like, does that make Pulp Fiction a terrible movie? No, of course not. But it's still worth noting that's a flaw, and, you know, we can do better next time. That is sort of my mindset when I'm coming into media analysis and criticism. So I think that any flaw, no matter how small, how large, is worthy of pointing out and critiquing, and explaining why it's wrong or something that you want to avoid.
Sort of in the realm of that same spirit of criticism, you will find people sometimes complaining that villains' plans won't work. So, like, this is just foolish. Why are we even bothering stopping this person? Like, their plan's not going to work anyway. Why are they doing that? Have they not thought it through? And I'd say about 95% of the time, I find this perspective invalid. And
so I don't, without examples, I don't really know what they're getting into here. So I think we're going to have to wait and see more solid examples until I can sort of begin to form an actual counter argument here, if even I have anything to counter. But off the bat, I will say that you know, like when I'm watching something, when I'm reading a book, if I notice like a flaw in the villain's plan, not only does that make the villain less intimidating, potentially less intimidating. I mean, a villain can have a flawed plan and still be an intimidating villain. Maybe that's part of their character. I think Heath Ledger's Joker was in the thumbnail for this video, and he has, he is relatively insane. I imagine he has a flawed plan. I haven't seen The Dark Knight in a while. By a while, I mean like 2 years. I watch that semi-regularly. But I imagine you could easily point out flaws in his plan, but that doesn't make him any less intimidating, because the character, even even if his plan's not going to work out, he's still going to kill a lot of people in the process, you know. But like, let's take Gustavo Fring from Breaking Bad. If I could find some way that his plan, let's say if I could find some way that his plan for poisoning the cartel members wouldn't work, so that would make him come off as a little less competent in my mind, which is already a bad place because Gustavo Fring is supposed to be a highly intelligent, highly competent villain. So one would expect his plans to make sense. But I would also find the other villains, the cartel members, I would find them less intimidating and less competent as well for not being able to recognize sort of what's going on. So those are just my general thoughts on why I think a villain's plan needs to work in certain circumstances. Why I think that maybe in some other circumstances they don't have to be airtight. That's sort of my base views on the subject. So let's see what else we have to get into here.
I like to say that about like you can have an opinion that you don't like a villain's plan or you don't think it's a good plot point, but to say
Agreed.
that it matters that a villain's plan ultimately in terms of achieving their final goal wouldn't work doesn't matter. I'll explain why not, and I'll even use some specific examples in order to do so. Here's the short version.
I'm excited to get into the examples because I think I can speak like broad strokes all day, but I think you don't really get anywhere unless you get into like the nitty gritty, how things unfold. So.
It doesn't matter if a villain's plan isn't going to work. All that matters is that they think it will work.
Okay.
And they will cause massive damage in trying to achieve it.
Okay. So we have 3 points here, right? It doesn't matter if a villain's plan will work. It does matter if they think it will work. And it does matter if they will cause great suffering or pain in order to try and pull it off. What comes to mind immediately for me is Thanos in Infinity War. His plan to cut the universe's population in half to provide more resources or to sort of more balance the universe so that there's less consumption going on or whatever his reasoning was. So that's a stupid plan. That is not going to pull. That's not going to work out the way. With control over reality, which is what Thanos has at the end of that movie, there are better ways to achieve that goal. However, Thanos, his moniker being the Mad Titan, we know he's a little crazy. We know he's a bit of a megalomaniac, and he is willing to cause a lot of harm to get to the end of his plan, which will also wipe out half the universe. So, threatening villain, a very intimidating. In that case, I would agree. His plan doesn't work, but he thinks it will work, and he will kill a lot of people to get it to work. So I agree there. I guess sort of where my issue with the thesis may come in is that like I said before, when you've got a villain who is supposed to be intelligent and fully aware or fully competent, like one would say, let's pull a recent example. Let's pull up a recent example in the character of Thrawn from Ahsoka. He's the villain of that show, and I have not witnessed any media with Thrawn outside of that show. I'm not a massive Thrawn fan. I know that people who like the extended universe really like Thrawn, what have you. But we're supposed to believe Thrawn is a very intelligent, very capable person. But he is fucking stupid and really cowardly in that show. and it is the mental gymnastics he has to do to sort of come to the point like, oh, I'm winning actually is very it's very telling of lazy writing on Filoni's part. Thrawn was not a very good villain in that show, and most of that was to do with the fact that he's supposed to be this very intelligent character, who I believe he's known for like killing Jedi, what have you. You got to be pretty smart and pretty capable to pull off those things, but that's not the character we see in the show, and therefore you can't take him seriously as a villain almost. Because everything that we're supposed to understand about him, everything we've come to know about him is really just false. It's only in place because the characters in the show are telling you like, hey, Thrawn's a threatening guy. But when it comes to actually showing you instead of telling you, the show can't deliver on that. He pulls his punches. He lets people get away with stuff, and in the end he says, this is my plan all along. That is a case where I think that he believes in what he's doing. He believes his plan is going to work, and he's also willing to kill a lot of people. He's willing to presumably destroy the Republic, reinstate the Empire, what have you, and his plan doesn't work. So we've fulfilled all three points, right? But Thrawn is still not threatening in any manner. So let's continue here. Having said that, let's continue here and see what else we might have to delve into.
Whether or not they could actually achieve what they're trying to achieve, whether or not is logistically possible, whether or not it will actually play out the way they want, whether they have miscalculated, none of that matters. All that really matters for a villain to function for the purposes of a story, do they think that what they're going to do is going to work? And is it harmful for them to try? Forget succeed. Is it harmful for them to even try? And if both of those are true, then whether or not the final plan works or could work or has a million holes in it doesn't matter. I'll give you a couple of examples.
Okay. We're getting into examples now. So this is going to be good. But as far as those past 20 seconds or whatever, more like 50 seconds, it just sort of seems to be restating the thesis. So we're on clear terms about what we're arguing here, which I think is good. You always want to be very clear and very you don't want people to mince your words. So I think it's good to kind of restate your thesis. But my same sort of example with Thrawn from before still applies. So we're gonna see about these other examples that we get into here.
Partly because the fact that these villains' plans wouldn't work doesn't even need to be a bug.
Okay, yeah, I see it. Scrolling into the timeline, I see Thanos here. The Master. Okay, so we're gonna get into Doctor Who territory here. This looks like 13th Doctor's Master, Sacha Dhawan. I like that actor. I thought he did a good job as the Master. I don't think that O was necessarily well written, but I think that guy did a good job. I would be down to see him as the Master and stuff that's better written. Superboy Prime, I'm unfamiliar with this. Then of course we have the Joker at the end here. Okay. So it looks like I'll have a lot to say about most of these, save for this comic book example here. But we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. See what they have to say.
It can be a feature of the characters. It tells you something about these people.
I certainly agree. It can be a feature of the character that their plan is insane and won't work. I think that is true with the Master in all of their incarnations, except for some plots with the Delgado Master, but maybe that's just my rose-tinted glasses looking back on it, wanting to think he's such a sly and slick old man with all this bravado and whatnot. He had some pretty nonsense BS plans in his days. But yeah, that applies to Thanos, that applies to the Joker, that applies to most incarnations of the Master. But that doesn't apply to like I said, that doesn't apply to Thrawn. we're not supposed to believe Thrawn is crazy. We're not supposed to believe like he just wants to see the world burn. We're supposed to believe that he's a real talented guy, and he really wants to. He's really got a formula. He's got a plan for all this stuff. Similar to Moff Gideon from Mandalorian. We're supposed to believe he's competent. We're supposed to believe he's got everything all planned out. But the the only factor that contributes to that perception of the character is that he's played by Giancarlo Esposito. Other than that, he's pretty he's a bit of a numbskull as well. So in that case, so I mean, I guess I agree with the general sentiment that villain plans don't necessarily have to work if they are justified by some other manner. Which I think will sort of be the main point here.
I think these plans will work. So this is where I'm going to cite some specific examples, because otherwise I could probably end the video there. Let's start with the one I remember seeing it most about. A few years ago, and he still comes up. Thanos. The idea that Thanos' plan to wipe out half of life in the universe as a way to curb the growth of life and keep resources managed and whatnot. More than a few people have pointed out that wouldn't work. I mean, aside from the fact that it is, so far as we can
other than Matt Pat, of course. Other than Matt Pat, who argued that Thanos was the hero. But yeah, no, like I just said, I agree with the Thanos example. It might... I might have to... I might skip over the Thanos section, since I've already covered him in depth. We'll see. We'll play a few more seconds.
Completely random who dies. Like, you could have accidentally, just by sheer numbers, killed the people who were cultivating the food, and the people who are left don't know how to do that. And so the whole place is going to get wiped out. But even if everything balances perfectly, and also...
This is a nice choice of shot for that, for saying that.
Like, it's of all life, not just sentient life. So, like, you're also, in theory, wiping out the animals used in agriculture and for meat and for feeding. Like, if you're cutting those in half too, then didn't you just have the exact same ratio problem? You just have a smaller raw number. But even if we set all of that aside, at best, this is rolling the clock back. People are gonna breathe.
Yes,
we're really good at it. So aren't we just gonna run into the same problem?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna skip ahead until at least the end of the Thanos section here. They have another section here, which seems to be doing with Thanos as well. So I do wanna check this out to see if there's anything new here. But as far as that goes, it sort of just seems to be saying like, hey, this is the plan. This is why it doesn't make sense. But Thanos is still intimidating in Infinity War. Okay, after watching ahead in this second little Thanos section, I actually did find something that I thought was worth commenting on. So we're gonna let her play.
So the fact that he believes that this is the ultimate correction says a lot about him. A lot about the way he thinks. A lot about his arrogance. To assume that once he hit on a notion, that'll just work. I'll just do that. Has he ever stopped and actually fully thought about it? No, possibly not. That's actually, in some ways, a little bit of the premise of some of one of the What If episodes, the one focusing on Black Panther. People like mocked this idea that Black Panther like talked Thanos out of his mission. But the thing is, like, he could, given that his mission was supposed to help and it wouldn't have worked. So that episode of What If, which isn't even a show I like, that kind of implies that nobody ever really got through to him with the notion that, yeah, this isn't going to work anyway, but until T'Challa did.
Okay. So I think that episode of What If actually is detrimental to Thanos' character, because we're supposed to believe in Infinity War, of course, his plan doesn't work. He thinks it will work. He's willing to cause death to get to it. So if all, like, if Thanos is really mad enough to believe his plan works, the fact that he can be rationalized with, and the fact that he hasn't thought about this alternative and seriously considered it, to me that is detrimental to his character. That makes him definitely less intelligent. And this isn't a flaw with Infinity War. This is a flaw with What If. Yeah, I think the fact that Thanos could be reasoned with kind of goes against the idea of saying that his plan didn't have to work because of these other factors. He's very clearly, T'Challa is here. He's like, hey, I don't think your plan's gonna work. Here's why. So you're telling me that if somebody talks to Thanos about this, they would actually be able to talk him out of it? Someone who jumps to genocide as his first option, we're supposed to believe he could genuinely be talked out of it? That is antithetical, I think, to Thanos' character. So I'm gonna continue watching through this section though, and we're just gonna see if I have anything else to comment on, and I'll do the same for the. I'll probably have a lot to say about the Master. Yeah, so I'll get back to you in a bit. Okay, we're here on the Master section. We're just going to jump right into it. I believe this is talking specifically about O, or the 13th Doctor's Master, or the Sacha Dhawan Master, or, whatever moniker you want to call him by.
Here's another one. Doctor Who. The last episode of the Jodie Whittaker era featured the Master.
Okay. Bit of a problem for me. So I thought we were going to be talking about the Master's plot in The Timeless Child. So full disclosure, I have not seen The Power of the Doctor. The most up-to-date I've been with New Who is I saw the most recent Dalek episode. So that was, it was one of those shitty New Year's Dalek specials that Chibnall did. All of them were like almost equally bad. So I can't even remember what it was called. There was like Revolution of the Daleks, and there was it Resolution? Was Resolution the most recent one? Because the Daleks had a New Year's resolution. Yeah, no, that is the most recent Doctor Who knowledge I have, and I didn't even finish that episode. I'm about halfway through it. The Doctor Who show is kind of it's a thing which I'm not really comfortable watching right now, given the current state of it. But that being said, I won't have an informed perspective here, but I might still be able to deliver some counter arguments. So we're gonna watch this play out.
This particular incarnation played by Sacha Dhawan. Towards the last,
this is the one where he dresses up as Rasputin, right? I've heard it. I've seen clips. I've seen the Rasputin clips from this episode.
Half, Sacha Dhawan basically kind of takes over the Doctor's life and body technically, but also turns into himself physically. If you don't know Doctor Who that much, they're both Time Lords. Time Lords can change their faces anyway, but he basically starts to go about and claim to be the Doctor, doing horrible things and saying, I'm the Doctor and I did this, destroying. That
sounds like something that would unironically make for a very good meddling monk plot in Big Finish / Classic Who. Maybe made for good plot and Power of the Doctor. I haven't heard too much about Power of the Doctor. Like I said, I haven't seen it. All I know is that Jodie turns in my least favorite Doctor turns into my second least favorite Doctor at the end. So you can imagine why I don't want to watch it. That sounds fun.
Whatever reputation she might have had, or at least attempting to. And I've had some people point out, this is a very silly plan. Why would people believe him? Even if he does this, he's just going to turn the Doctor's name to just as much mud as his own name as the Master was. So what's he accomplishing out of this? And if he succeeded, she's effectively dead anyway if he actually did succeed. So what's the point of this extra step? What is this meant to accomplish? And it says a lot about him.
So that doesn't sound, like I said, I haven't seen the episode, so this is an informed perspective, but based on what you've said here, that plan actually sounds like, it's not that it doesn't make sense. I think that makes a lot of sense. The Master wanting to tarnish the Doctor's reputation, even posthumously, that's something that fits with the character. And that's something that it also makes sense for them to want to do. It's something they can achieve given enough time. Obviously, the Doctor's been around forever, the Master's been around forever. It's going to take a lot of time to ruin the Doctor's reputation. And then there's the whole idea of you're going to have to ruin their reputation and all of the civilizations and all of the time zones they've traveled to. New Who likes to pretend that it has a consistent universe where things are happening progressively, whereas Classic Who fully acknowledges, like, no, we're jumping all over the place. We're not really building to anything. The only thing that kind of built upon the last thing was everything to do with the Time Lords, which makes sense because the Time Travelers, them having a linear perspective, while the rest of the universe is experiencing them at different points in time. That makes sense. But New Who really likes to believe, like, oh, here's this prophecy and we're building to it through different times and different and that is like the plot for so many New Who seasons, and it's a big factor of why I don't like New Who as a whole. Even though I love Christopher Eccleston, I love Peter Capaldi, I've even turned around on Matt Smith. I really like him in series 5. So I like parts of New Who, but the way it does its world building is catastrophic and stupid, and everything that was stupid about it got amplified tenfold in Chris Chibnall's era.
That this is where his priorities are. I've talked about this in some other times when I've talked about his particular incarnation of the Master, but he is deeply self-loathing. That was really evident to me by the time I finished my rewatch of that era of Doctor Who. He really, really cannot stand himself. Don't let me go back to me. So even though he is physically in the shape of who he's always been, the fact that he left his own body and took over the Doctor's, even though he reshaped it to look like himself, he has deluded himself into thinking that's the same as a fresh start, as getting to be somebody else. But he's both self-loathing and can't change. At least this incarnation of him can't. So this says a lot about him, regardless of whether he could ever accomplish what he was trying to do, or if he even really thought all the way through about what his end goal was. Because I think you could argue that he didn't really have one. He had various steps that he intended to take, and he took them as he went along. Did he have an end goal even? I'm not sure he did.
So to me, like I said, I haven't seen Power of the Doctor. I'll have to qualify that. But to me, it sounded like the Master's plan, like he was executing it, and it made sense for the character to do, and it was something that he could do. So I don't really see how that factors into the villain's plan not working, because it appears to have worked, at least for some amount of time, until, whatever the climax is of the episode, whatever ends up reverting that. He appears to have pulled off his plan and have been in the process of executing it during the run of the episode. So I don't think that example actually factors into the overall thesis that a villain's plan doesn't have to work. Because to me, that seemed like his plan did work, which would be baffling for Chibnall-era Doctor Who, having something that's consistent and makes sense. I might have to watch Power of the Doctor now. We'll have to see. But yeah, I don't necessarily see how that relates too strongly to the overall thesis.
But even if he did, might not have worked. But it doesn't matter, because he's still dangerous, because he was willing to destroy the Doctor and Earth and whatever else he felt like in order to do it. I kind of skipped over that bit of Thanos, but obviously, even if Thanos's idea of culling half the universe isn't going to work, he's still going to wipe out half the universe. And he thinks it's going to work. So those were the two things, as I said. One more, this one from comics. Superboy Prime, specifically as shown in the crossover event.
So this is another one that I don't have a reference for, but I'm willing to just, watch it and see if I have anything to say. So I think I'll actually pause the recording because I don't think I'm going to say too much during this section. So I don't want to just, freeboot the video. I don't want to be XQC here sitting in my corner like a little rodent. So I'm going to pause the recording. I'm going to watch this section. I'm going to see if I have anything to say. See you in a bit. Okay, so like I predicted, I didn't have much to say about the Superboy Prime segment. It seemed very similar to Thanos, though. A character who's kind of lost his shit and goes on the warpath. So I don't think my perspective there would have been too nuanced, but we're getting into The Dark Knight now. We're getting into Joker. I've seen this movie at least 5 times. I've seen this movie a lot, and I'm very I think it's a very good movie. I should probably rewatch it. It's kind of coming up on that date where I need to rewatch it. So it's not fresh in my mind, but I think I can still talk about the movie as an active participant.
We have an example of why this doesn't matter. The Joker from The Dark Knight. His ultimate plan, I mean, whether it was his ultimate plan or his only plan or how many of these are overlapping plans, it's hard to tell with this guy. As much as he claims that he doesn't have a plan.
Do I really look like a guy with a plan?
As much as he might claim that, he was ultimately building towards the 2 ships scenario, expecting one ship to blow up the other. And they don't. He failed. He was wrong. He thought that
when the chips are down, these civilized people, they'll eat each other.
But they didn't, because he was wrong. But wow, did he kill a lot of people and do a lot of damage getting there to the point.
So I think there's a debate to be had here on whether his plan worked or didn't work. Essentially, the Joker, he had set up a saw trap almost, for the final act of the movie. He said, both of these ships are going to blow up unless one of you decides to blow up the other one. It's this very, like I said, it's like a jigsaw trap from the Saw movies. It's kind of testing your humanity, your will to survive, and what you're willing to go through to survive. And I think in the sense that he got the boats out there on the water, he got them all rigged up, he delivered the ultimatum to both of the crews. He even added in the another factor that one of the boats was filled with inmates, the other boat was filled with just normal, regular people. And inmates are also, I should say, like, incarcerated people are normal people as well. It's just, there was a distinction made there. So I think, his plan succeeded, and his plan made sense, because, he got the boats out there on the water. They were all rigged up. It didn't work, but that's not due to any flaw of the planning process. That is more so due to his nihilism had, forced him, had given him the perspective that, people, when faced with these decisions, they'll become dogs, they'll do whatever it takes to survive. That's the position he was in. And he was just proven wrong. Which I think is a pretty strong story. That's a big character moment. In a very, very fucking good movie. Batman Begins and Dark Knight are like my 2 favorite comic book movies. I'm a Batman fan. I'm not even the biggest Joker fan. My personal favorite villain is Scarecrow, and I think he was kind of done a little dirty in the Nolan trilogy. But they're still very good movies, at least the first 2. I haven't rewatched Dark Knight Rises in forever, but I digress here a lot. What I'm basically trying to say is his plan didn't fail due to any step of the planning phase. It failed due to his miscalculation of the human condition.
Where it turned out he was just wrong. Still needed to be stopped. Still a very, very dangerous villain. The fact that his plan ultimately didn't work doesn't matter.
Yes, but his plan still made sense in a manner. In a way of speaking, his plan to test how far people are willing to go, it made sense. It didn't work out the way he wanted it to, but there's not a flaw. Well, you could probably at some point in the movie point out flaws in his plan, or probably, it's just me assuming, nothing's flawless. You could probably point out like minor details that don't line up, but grand scheme, his plan made sense. and he kind of pulled it off. You know, so this, I don't think this really supports the thesis either, saying that your villain, the plan doesn't have to make sense for it to work, or it doesn't have to make sense for the villain to still be threatening. So let's just see what else she has to say about the Joker before wrapping this up.
We know you want to give your kids the world.
All right, I'm gonna